Jason Chen. Please be seated. Good morning, jurors. Hope you had a restful night as much as possible. I understand that some of y'all like to work out. That's great. Keep that habit up. It'll keep you from moving around like an old man. I've had to add flexibility to my routine for sure, but it's good that you can have a little stress relief and keep yourself healthy. Before we start, I just have to ask, as I will every morning, is everyone able to abide by the court's admonition to not be exposed to media, to not discuss the case among yourselves, and that anyone see any of those things happening? Everyone able to abide by the court's admonition, please nod your head. Records reflect all heads are nodding. Okay. Ready to proceed with the direct examination of Investigator Crawford, General?
Yes, Your Honor.
Crawford, come on up. We swear to do this.
Somebody swear affirmative. That's what we're about to get to.
Yes, sir.
I'll ask for a DVD, Your Honor. Good morning, Investigator Crawford.
Good morning.
So let's wrap up where we left off in Mr. Chen's apartment. When you were in Mr. Chen's apartment and you saw what you believed to be blood, and then the blue star reacted, at that point in time, did you know whose blood that was?
I didn't know whose blood was what that was.
Did CPD take steps, more urgent steps than normal in a situation like that to try to learn whose blood that was?
Yes, we did take samples of blood, swabs of blood. We did presumptive test through the means of Kastle-Meyer test, which essentially you're testing for potential stains or things such as to identify if it is potentially blood. We also collected carpet samples. Once those items were collected, once we had the ability to obtain a potential DNA profile from the victim, such as her toothbrush, then we submitted those items to the TBO.
And how often have you worked with the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation?
Pretty much every homicide investigation that I've had.
Do they do a majority of testing of items that are collected in a homicide case?
Correct. They do most of the majority of the forensic testing that's done on evidence collected in the case. Other than fingerprints are done by our APIS investigators in-house. And some of our electronic forensics, such as phones or computers, are done at check.
Typically, how long does TBI take to test items and return those testing results to law enforcement?
Typically, the testing process takes an extensive amount of time. Typically, when we submit a TBI request for evidence to be processed through their lab, we submit a request along with submitting the evidence to their lab for testing. Typically, in a homicide case, something such as DNA takes approximately 9 months or so before we get those results. And it's not that it takes them 9 months to determine exactly what it is, but it's essentially their caseload that they have at the Tennessee Bureau of Investigations that it takes them a while to get to our actual submitted evidence before they're able to conduct their investigation.
Were multiple items in this case taken to the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation for testing?
Yes, they were.
And is there a lab in Chattanooga?
No, there is not.
Where are the closest labs?
The closest labs is, the main lab is in Nashville, Tennessee, and they have another lab that's close to us, being in Knoxville.
Do you recall which one these items from this case were submitted to?
Yes.
Which one?
They were submitted to the Knoxville lab. We made contact with the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. We actually requested that these pieces of evidence be tested exigently as quickly as possible, meaning that we could submit them and hopefully they would take this case and put it in front of the rest of the cases to potentially to identify whose blood or what kind of blood was located inside the apartment. We were able to make contact with the lab in Knoxville with TBI, and they fulfilled their request.
So did you ask for urgent testing to determine whose blood was in the apartment?
Yes, that's correct.
And were they able to return those results to you?
Yes, they were.
Were you able to review those results?
Yes, I was.
And whose blood was in that apartment?
It was identified as that of the Jasmine cases.
Does TBI have protocols that they relay to law enforcement in regards to how much evidence they are able or willing to test in major cases?
Yes.
What are those, to your knowledge?
To my knowledge, specifically with DNA, for every piece of evidence we submit, they have different requirements or different things that they have in place. Specifically with DNA testing, they will only accept for testing 10 items at a time, which obviously we showed pictures earlier of potential items of evidence that had blood on them, which obviously tells us more than 10 items. So we have to submit the items that we believe potentially have the best result to identify someone. We're allowed to submit 10 pieces of evidence for testing, along with our DNA standards. In investigations, we collect standards from victims, persons of interest, suspects, or potentially people that may have also had the ability to be in that same scene as well. In this specific case, we were able to get a search warrant and get a buccal, which is a swab, a buccal swab on the inside of your cheek for Mr. Jason Chen. And then we were able to first thing that was submitted was a known toothbrush for the victim that would have a high probability of her DNA being on it. Those two items were submitted to the TBI, along with other pieces of evidence.
Going back to 110 Tremont Street, you testified to searching, and the jury will see more photos, you testified to searching Jason's residence. Did you do any searches outside of the apartment building?
Yes, we did.
And where was that?
After the initial search of apartment 210 at 110 Tremont Street, in investigations, we start small and work big. We try to figure out what exactly happened in the scene, and then we expand upon that. That includes not only searching, but a neighborhood canvas to identify potential witnesses, attempt to locate video, or potentially see if other items of evidence or anything has been discarded outside of the crime scene. The first step after the apartment, as I requested that investigators, then go door to door and conduct a neighborhood canvas within the apartment to potentially locate any further witnesses. While that neighborhood canvas was being conducted, I subsequently went to the exterior of 110 Tremont Street and started doing a walkthrough of that area as well, to include the outer perimeter, the parking lot area, and dumpsters located there. I expanded further past that. We had search teams conducted in the wooded areas and the residential areas, potentially locating further pieces of evidence, attempting to locate the victim. To the extent, I found a manhole cover at the rear of the apartments that was partially exposed and seemed to be that it had been moved recently. I personally entered that manhole and crawled 70 feet underground. We try to extensively search the entire area to include all the dumpsters.
Would it be fair to say that you do everything that you can possibly think to do in a location such as this with such a large amount of blood?
With the manner and resources that we have, yes.
Okay. And let's go back to the dumpsters. Were there dumpsters? Jury saw some Google Map images. Were there dumpsters next to Mr. Chen's apartment building?
Yes, there were.
And were you present when there was, and you can explain to the jury what kind of search or investigation was done into the dumpsters?
At first, even with exterior locations that we searched, the process is still the same in terms of how it's done. The first part is a walkthrough to potentially identify via the naked eye items of potentially evidentiary value that we potentially want to collect or have further interest in. So such as a dumpster, the first thing I'm not going to do is go in there and start ripping every trash bag out or every piece of clothing, because I want that documented by photographs prior to any of that being done. In this specific case, I entered the dumpster area. If you remember correctly, there was a wooden gated fence to kind of hide the outside of it from the street or from the residents. I subsequently opened that wooded door and entered that area where two dumpsters were located. Upon entering that area, I observed a few items of clothing on the ground and a sanitary pad, a women's sanitary pad, that appeared to potentially have what appeared to be blood and seemed out of place. Once I observed that, I subsequently notified our crime scene unit that we were also going to have further evidence that needed to be processed outside of apartment 210.
What else was, well, was the evidence that you just spoke of, including the sanitary pad, where was it when you opened the doors that covered the dumpsters?
Upon entering the closed dumpster area, the fence, it was just a few feet inside of the doorway, on the floor, on the ground, on the concrete ground, outside of the dumpsters. There was trash in those dumpsters, but these items were discarded on the ground outside the dumpsters.
Just laying there for you to see?
Correct.
Not inside of the dumpster?
That's correct.
Was there clothing there?
Yes, that's correct.
What type of clothing?
There were a pair of pants, a pair of shoes, a women's sanitary pad.
Did anything stand out to you about the pants?
The pants appeared to have what appeared to be possibly blood on them.
Discoloration?
Discoloration consistent with blood.
Do you recall what kind of shoes they were?
They were white in color, white in color canvas style shoes with a white sole on them, low tops. I believe they were around the size of 11 or 11 and a half.
One moment, Your Honor.
Yes, ma'am.
I'll put that on there once we tell the court. Yeah, we're just trying to, we don't discuss it.
I'm going to approach you, Investigator Crawford, with 1, 2, 3, 6 photos. They're stapled today. Can you look through those? Do you recognize those photos?
I did.
What is depicted in them?
It's the photos are that of the dumpster area, the enclosure, and that of the items I described earlier that were on the ground on the concrete area.
Do those photos accurately represent what that area looked like on November 20, what would that have been, 28, 2022?
That's correct.
Okay. Your Honor, I'd ask that this exhibit be the state's next exhibit, and the state did try to assist the court reporter, so we have the yellow stickers on. These have the -1, -2, so they could be a collective with the dashes.
Okay. Collective 83.
Judge?
Yes, collective 83.
All right, Investigator Crawford, I'm going to post these on the screen behind you. Simply the doors of the dumpster, correct?
That's correct.
This is State's Exhibit 83-1. State's Exhibit 83-2. What does this depict?
This is a photograph from the interior of the dumpster area, just inside the gated area.
And what can you see on the ground there?
You can see the discarded clothing, the pair of shoes I was describing, a sanitary pad, and there's also a pair of what appears to be women's underwear.
State's Exhibit 83-3. What is this?
It's a closer up shot of what we just observed. That also shows the same items, the pants, the shoes, the sanitary pad, and the women's underwear.
And can you point out what discoloration you were referring to on the pants?
That's correct. There's a reddish brown discoloration. Once again, this green, the reddish color seems to fade out as bright as the normal pictures do. But there's a reddish brown stain there as well.
Was there a large amount of stains on those jeans?
Yes.
And I can't recall if you actually named the brand. Were you able to determine what brand of shoe that was?
I believe they were Vans.
Investigator Crawford, were you present for the autopsy that was performed in this case on Miss Pace's body?
Yes, I was.
Is that typical of a homicide investigator?
Yes.
And do you remain in the room for a majority of at least the initial autopsy?
Yes, we do.
Were you there when the medical examiner began to examine Miss Pace's body when she did have clothing on?
That's correct.
Were you there when the medical examiner began to take her clothing off so that he could examine her body?
Yes, that's correct.
Was Miss Pace, did she appear to be on her menstrual cycle?
Yes, that's correct.
Did she have a sanitary pad on that resembled the sanitary pad in the photo behind you?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, we're going to move on. So you've searched Mr. Chen's apartment. You have identified Jasmine Pace's blood in the apartment.
Correct.
And would it be fair to say that Jason Chen was a suspect in Jasmine Pace's murder at this point?
Yes, that's correct.
And so did you at this point, or maybe you even began before, at what point did you begin to look into Jason Chen as a suspect and as a person of interest?
Originally, he became a potential person of interest at the beginning when I was brought into the investigation, just due to the fact that we had a missing persons under suspicious circumstances, and it is extremely uncommon with my experience as a law enforcement investigator that a significant other not be a part of the process in attempting to locate that missing person. So due to the lack of communication, I believed him to be a person of interest after law enforcement attempted to reach out to him with no callback.
Did you try?
Yes.
So in your investigation of Jason Chen as a suspect, what preliminary information were you able to gather about Mr. Chen?
First, we identified his residence. Obviously, apartment 210 at 110 Tremont Street. We identified a phone number associated with Jason Chen via numerous individuals. We also identified his vehicle being a 2018 Toyota Camry that we're unable to locate. We identified that he was currently enrolled at the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga as a student. Identified that his family appeared to be from the Nolensville, Tennessee area. We identified a home address for there as well. We also looked into historical addresses for Jason Chen to include his residence in Chattanooga prior to his time being a resident at 110 Tremont Street. We also attempted to identify family members and associates of Mr. Chen.
What county is Nolensville in?
Williamson County.
Were you ever able to locate Mr. Chen in Chattanooga?
No.
Do you happen to recall, this is a difficult question, what Mr. Chen's phone number is? If not, that's okay.
Not verbatim.
Oh, that's okay. What kind of vehicle did Mr. Chen drive?
A gray 2018 Toyota Camry. I believe it was Tennessee tag BJF 0062.
Okay. Gray Toyota Camry 2018.
That's correct.
At some point, were you able to access Jasmine Pace's cell phone records?
Yes, that is correct.
Did she also have Mr. Chen's number saved in her phone?
I don't know if she had it saved in her phone due to her cellular device not being recovered, but we were able to get her phone records from Verizon.
How many investigators with the police department do you estimate that tried to contact Mr. Chen during this week?
I know that 2 investigators attempted to make contact via phone communication. I know that during the hours leading up to before I was notified about the investigation, I believe a patrol supervisor also attempted the contact number for Jason Chen. We also attempted to make contact with other family members and friends in the Chattanooga area before moving on to Nolensville.
At some point, did you become aware that Mr. Chen was most likely in Nolensville?
Yes, that's correct.
And how's that?
On November 28th, we applied for a search warrant for Mr. Chen's phone records to include historical data and have real-time ping locations to be readily available. Real-time ping locations is essentially a 10 to 15 minute ping where the phone company will ping the phone essentially, and it will provide an estimated location. They would send those records to us every 10 to 15 minutes. It would be provided in a GPS style lat-long coordinates. As soon as we started getting those coordinates, we were notified that his phone device was showing in the Nolensville, Tennessee area.
And at that point, did you have an address for his parents' home?
We did.
So that ping, the ping information, so once you had access to that from the provider, do you recall who the provider for Mr. Chen's cell phone service was?
It was T-Mobile.
You essentially were able to track him.
Correct. It's only the ping locations at that time was the only information that we were provided by the phone company, and it's only real time up from the point that they send that information. At that point, we didn't have any historical data to potentially track or see his communications or anything like that. We didn't receive those to a later date. So we're attempting to track his location. Sometimes the ping locations don't provide an exact, precise location based on the quality of the phone reception. So sometimes the ping locations were a larger area. It would essentially give a neighborhood location or within city limits. But at some points they were pretty precise and showed locations consistent, being with his parents' address.
Okay. Was a search warrant for Jason Chen's parents' home applied for?
Yes, that's correct.
Was it issued?
Yes, that is correct.
And were you present when that search warrant was executed on his parents' home in Nolensville, Tennessee?
Yes, that is correct.
How many people from the Chattanooga Police Department went with you?
We had 4 people from the homicide division, being myself, Detective Seach, Detective Darrell Slaughter, and one of our homicide supervisors, Sergeant Miller. I also contacted the crime unit to have a part of their team also respond for assistance with documentation, scene, and collecting evidence. We had them respond to the scene based on conversations with Nolensville PD and their capabilities of crime scene in terms of how they can collect evidence. They felt more suited that our Chattanooga Police Department crime scene unit would be more suited to handle this.
When you arrived at the home, who answered the door?
The parents of Jason Chen were the first people to answer the door.
And what'd you tell them?
I advised them that I had a search warrant for the residence. I requested that they exit the residence and also requested if any other parties were inside the residence at that time.
Was Jason Chen at the residence?
He was.
When did you first make contact with him in terms of see his actual person?
After speaking with Jason's parents about the search warrant and asked them requested to leave the residence or to step out of the residence so we could execute the search warrant, Jason's father actually yelled, "Jason." I observed him exit a door on the second level of the home. It was a two-story residence. It is a two-story residence. As you enter, there's a staircase to the right, and there's like a cross balcony, which allows you to see access to that room. I observed that room door open, and I observed Jason Chen exit that room before walking down the stairs and greeting me at the front door.
I'm gonna have you turn around. Investigator Crawford, this is a Google Maps, just typed into the search bar. Do you recognize this location?
Yes, I do.
And what is the, what is the address? Do you recall what the address is? We'll go back.
1943 Ashburn Court, Knoxville, Tennessee.
Okay, so there we are. What is this? Sorry.
That's Jason Chen's parents' residence.
This is the residence that you showed up to at the front door with that search warrant that you were just discussing.
That's correct.
Oh, I'm sorry, defense counsel's reviewing the photos I was about to show, Investigator Crawford. I'm sorry, Judge, should have made that clear. You thought it was crazy. Investigator Crawford, I'm going to show you a handful of photos. Right there, I don't know how many. $31. You will flip through those photos for me. Investigator Crawford, do you recognize the contents of these photos?
Yes, I do.
Do they accurately represent both 1943 Ashburn Court on the night that the search warrant was executed, and also the way that Mr. Chen appeared when you made contact with him and when he was first spoken to by police?
Yes, that's correct.
And I apologize, let me number these real quick.
No problem.
What would the next exhibit number be?
Starting at 84.
Would you like for these to be numbered individually or dashes? 84, 85, 86?
This large amount, let's go and make them separate exhibits.
Okay.
84 through 114.
Investigator Crawford, while I'm numbering these, did Mr. Chen make any statements to you when he was first contacted?
You had questions for me?
Questions about the search warrant?
He, at first contact was made with the parents, explained that we had a search warrant for the residence. Once Jason Chen was down there, I also advised him the exact same thing. I advised him we had a search warrant for the residence. I also advised him that he was going to be detained and taken to the Nolensville Police Department, where we had a search warrant for his person, with a collection of evidence such as DNA, fingerprints, photographs, and other things that were on the search warrant. At which point, Jason asked if we had any more warrants, which then I advised him we would talk to him further at the Nolensville Police Department.
Can you describe for the jury what Mr. Jason Chen's demeanor was?
More defensive.
Would you describe him as calm?
Yes.
Did he tell you at that time that he wanted to tell you what happened?
Leading?
Did he tell you at that time that he wanted
Council
to?
President.
What, if anything, did Mr. Jason Chen tell you that night?
He made another statement that he asked if we had spoken to his lawyer yet.
And other than that, did he say anything else?
No, we attempted to identify and try to make contact with the lawyer. At this point in time, it was approximately 2 a.m., knowing that it became difficult to potentially get an attorney on the phone at that time, and also potentially respond to Nolensville, Tennessee, was difficult. We attempted, Daryl Slaughter attempted to speak with him at the Nolensville Police Department after he was processed for evidence.
Objection. You're referred.
Investigator Crawford, let's begin to go through the photos that you just reviewed that have been placed into evidence. I'll have you turn around to the screen. What does this photo depict?
This is a photograph, me on the left-hand side, other officers on the right-hand side. You can see just inside the doorway is Jason Chen's father, and you can observe Jason Chen to the left as well.
With a hat on.
That's correct.
That's State's Exhibit 84. State's Exhibit 85. Again, what do we see in this photo?
Once again, it's a photograph of the doorway area that depicts Jason Chen's father on the right-hand side, and on the left-hand side of the picture walking away is Jason Chen.
And were separate photos of Mr. Chen taken once he was transported to the Nolensville Police Department?
Yes, that's correct.
State's Exhibit 86, is this one of those photos?
Yes, that is correct.
And are the photos taken exactly as he came out of the house that night?
Correct.
State's Exhibit 87, for the record, can you read what that hat says?
The hat says, "Anything goes."
In the course of your investigation, did you see this hat any other times and
Yes, I
places?
did.
State's Exhibit 88, side profile of Mr. Chen.
Yes, that's correct.
State's Exhibit 89, of course, a close-up of Anything Goes hat.
Yes, that's correct.
All right, so you testified that Mr. Chen walked out of a room when you first saw him in the home. What kind of room was that?
It was a bedroom that had a small piece of furniture to include a desk and a bed.
Did you subsequently assist in searching that room?
Yes, I did.
State's Exhibit 90. Is this a photo of that bedroom?
That's correct. It's a photograph taken once you enter the room. It's of the left-hand side of the room.
Did you happen to open up that red box?
Yes, I did.
State's Exhibit 91 will be the photo being shown currently. What is that?
It's a cell phone.
In what appears to be some kind of jewelry box, is that correct?
Correct. The red box is a jewelry box with jewelry and other items that are stuffed in there. You can see on the bottom half of the jewelry box, the black top half of a iPhone cell phone.
And is State's Exhibit 92 a closer up of that cell phone?
Yes, that's correct.
Does the cell phone have a case on it?
Yes, that's correct.
And what is that other item attached to the phone?
It's a ID/credit card holder. There's one of those stick-on ones you can put on the back of a cell phone.
Did you ever see this piece of evidence again throughout your investigation?
Yes, I did.
Did the Chattanooga Police Department collect this cell phone?
Yes, we did.
Is this at eventually, we'll get there, but is this the phone that a forensic download was completed on at the Chattanooga Police Department?
Yes, that's correct.
State's Exhibit 93. Explain to the jury what we're seeing here.
It's a separate angle of the same room we've seen photographs of. The first one shows the bedded area to include the small shelving area with the jewelry box on top. This is an angle that picks up the back corner of the left-hand side of the room that you can see the door, and you can see a chair which leads to a desk.
State's Exhibit 94, is that a photo of the desk?
That's correct.
And there are, what kind of items on the desk?
There is handwritten notes. There's a binder. There are glasses, Jason Chen's wallet, and a laptop computer.
Were those glasses collected that day, do you recall?
I do not recall. I know the photographs were taken.
State's Exhibit 95. Were these note cards collected from the desk?
Yes, that's correct.
State's Exhibit 96, again, this is a close-up showing, again, the glasses.
Yes, that's correct.
This is even more of a close-up, closer to the glasses, and then you can see that there's a notebook there with what appears to be writing on it.
Yes, that's correct.
And what is that black object behind that notebook?
It's a wallet.
Was the wallet collected
Yes, that's correct.
in the notebook?
Yes, that's correct.
Your Honor, may I have the deputies flip off the screen light? Investigator Crawford, were you able to review these note cards?
Yes, that's correct.
I'm gonna give you it's State's Exhibit 98, I'll give you the actual copy for whatever one is easiest to read. Let me have this one right here. Do you see this note up here that says Crawford?
Yes, that's correct.
That's your last name, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And 423-443-0667, what is that?
That's my cell phone number.
All right, and then let's go down here. Can you please read that out loud to the jury?
Saturday, starting from the top down. Saturday, November 19th, last time I saw her. Tuesday, November 22nd, last time she called. She has been a scribbled out word, long history of running away from her parents, comma, ran away to Canada, comma, has a restraining order against her ex, period.
And can you read this scribble here?
Starting from the top, it
Yes,
says she has a long history of running away from her parents. And then at the bottom, I believe it says great.
And then this note here.
Starting from the top down, it says talk to the 26th. And then it says missing.
I'm sorry, say
It says at the bottom half, it says missing.
okay. On that note part right there.
Correct.
This is a close-up, State's Exhibit 99 of other notes, correct?
That is correct.
Did these numbers mean anything to you?
Not right now.
And that you agree that says approach them, and then it looks like there's a note with some ring fingers, ring finger sizes.
Yes, that's correct.
Just a close-up of some of the things that you just read, correct?
Correct.
Can you, by any chance, I don't know if you'll be able to, see if you can read this closer up, that purple note card?
Yes.
What does it say?
If law enforcement contact other family members, what to do, they do.
That was State's
Do they
Exhibit. I'm sorry, did you say something else? I
I
cut you.
corrected myself. It says, what do they do?
Okay, State's Exhibit 100. This is a close-up of the State's Exhibit 101 of what you had previously read, correct?
That's correct.
Close-up of what you previously read, State's Exhibit 102, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
This is another note here.
Correct.
Okay, can you start with the top note and go ahead and read that?
Yes, this note at the top, I read the first part of that note in one of the previous pictures. The top note says, talk to her mom on the 26th. And it says at the bottom of that note, missing person yesterday.
And then let's go ahead and start reading the bottom note as best you can with the jumbled words.
From the top down, it states, November 19th, last time I saw her. Scribbled out, it appears to be Shul. Says she would call me once a day is above. I crossed out every day. Last time was on the November 22nd on phone. I believe it says twos, T-U-E-S, in scribbled writing.
State's Exhibit 104, this was the notebook that was sitting underneath the glasses, is that correct?
That's correct.
And let's go ahead and read this a little more clear here.
From the top down, it states Friday, November 18th, last time I saw her. Tuesday, November 22nd, last time we talked. She has a huge history of running away from her home in her teenage years. Mom was an alcoholic, ran away to Canada for several years and was homeless. Her dad left when she was a kid, has restraining order against her ex. The next bulletin says she was recently online Facebook, and the bottom says next to kin.
State's Exhibit 105, is this an opened photo, a photo of the opened wallet that was on that desk?
Yes, it is.
And what was inside?
Inside of the wallet, the crimes unit took out the two Tennessee State identification cards to show that those items were found inside of that wallet, to show also potentially identity, potential possessor of that wallet. Further inside of that wallet, miscellaneous credit and debit cards were found in there, along with the health insurance card.
Were these two of the cards that were found inside that wallet?
Yes, that's correct.
What are the last four digits on that Regions Bank card?
4189
And the expiration date
05/26.
and the name?
Jason W. Chen.
Were there other bedrooms in the home that law enforcement went through?
Correct. We went through the entirety of the house.
Okay. Was there a bedroom upstairs with a bed that had sort of striped sheets on it?
That's
Do you
correct.
recall?
There were multiple bedrooms upstairs. I have to see pictures.
Is this one of the bedrooms that was upstairs?
No, it's not.
Where was this bedroom?
That bedroom was located actually directly below the first bedroom we saw photographs of. I described going into the residence, going up a stairwell, coming back over a catwalk-style balcony to this side of the house, the left-hand side of the house. So the first room we looked at would be the top left. This room would be directly under it in the bottom left. So if you were to enter going to the living room area, the far left corner of the residence, what would be this bedroom is located in.
And is that the bedroom in the photo behind you?
That's correct.
State's Exhibit 106. What is that black object on the bed?
It's a North Face backpack.
State's Exhibit 107, is that a closer up of that backpack?
Yes, that is correct.
Again, 108. Different angle with the North Face logo that you can see.
Correct. It's, after it's photographed, and once the searches began, they now flip the backpack to document the other side of the backpack.
Were you able to identify whose backpack that is?
At the time when I observed the backpack in that room, I observed it to be consistent with a backpack Jason Chen was seen with in the days after the homicide and before. And contents within the backpack are indicative of Jason Chen being the possessor of that backpack.
Was that backpack collected by the police department?
That's correct.
Can you tell the jury what kind of items were in that backpack?
There was all sorts of miscellaneous items that one would find in a backpack, specifically potentially someone that was, had left the residence. There was multiple items to include umbrella, eyeglass case. There was a lot of different items.
Did you observe an eyeglasses case in the backpack?
Yes, there was a black eyeglass case within the backpack.
What was inside the eyeglass case?
Miscellaneous items to also include a Verizon SIM card.
Were you able to locate Mr. Chen's vehicle?
Yes, we were.
Where was it?
It was parked within the garage at that residence, a single car garage.
Was the garage door closed?
Yes, it was.
Were there vehicles in the driveway?
Yes, there were.
How many?
There were two.
State's Exhibit 112. What is the jury looking at here?
This is a photograph of from the doorway from the interior of the residence looking back into the garage. You can see the 2018 Toyota Camry. I described it as a single car garage. There are 2 doors, but it appears that they use half of their garage as storage. So there isn't really room for another car to be in there. So you'll see the car parked in there, and it's very tight quarters based on the amount of items that are in the garage. It's hard to move around and get around the vehicles.
Were you able to verify based on the license tag that this vehicle was the vehicle registered to Jason Chen?
The Tennessee license plate and its VIN number.
And the VIN number, you said?
Yes, that's correct.
Just a closer up of Mr. Chen's gray Toyota Camry.
Yes, that's correct.
And then lastly here, Mr. Chen's license plate, is that correct?
That's correct.
Did law enforcement confiscate Mr. Chen's vehicle?
We did collect it as evidence at that time.
Was it taken to the Chattanooga Police Department?
Yes, it was during the execution of the search warrant. That vehicle was then taken by tow and taken back to the Chattanooga Police Department for further processing of evidence.
Were you able to enter that vehicle at any point in time?
Yes, we applied for a search warrant for the search and processing of that vehicle, at which point it was granted. After the search warrant was granted and signed off, then we executed the search warrant and began processing that vehicle.
Did Mr. Chen's car smell like marijuana?
No.
So if we're going chronologically, this search warrant was executed. Chronologically in the investigation, what major event happened next?
The search warrant is executed. Mr. Chen is transported to the Nolensville Police Department. Subsequently, after he was transported, we concluded the search warrant at 1943 Ashburn Court to include collecting evidence and taking possession of the 2018 Toyota Camry that was subsequently towed back to the Chattanooga Police Department, followed by law enforcement investigators. After that was towed back, Mr. Chen was transported to the Williamson County Jail. We subsequently drove back to the Chattanooga Police Department, where then Mr. Chen was only placed under NCIC hold, investigative hold at that point. Where we came back, I applied for an arrest warrant through the Hamilton County Magistrate's Office, at which point he was signed off order for at the time for criminal homicide.
And at this point in time, did anybody know where Jasmine was?
No.
Were investigators and other law enforcement officers at the Chattanooga Police Department actively looking for Miss Pace?
We didn't stop until we located her.
What day was that arrest warrant issued?
The arrest warrant, it was issued on November 30th, 2020.
And do you recall what day it was that Jasmine's body was located on the side of the Tennessee River off of Suck Creek Road?
On December 1st.
I'm not going to go into too much detail, but were you notified when Jasmine's body was located?
Yes, that's correct.
Did you report to that area where the suitcase had been found?
Yes, that's correct.
And then subsequently, did the medical examiner also arrive at that scene off of Suck Creek Road?
Yes, that's correct.
And was it after that that you also went to the medical examiner's office for the autopsy?
That is correct.
Can you explain the difference for the jury between a forensic download of a cell phone versus obtaining cell phone records via search warrant?
Correct.
Can you explain the difference?
So you'll hear it during this trial that there's potentially items that need to get brought forward. There is a forensic download of the cell phone. What that actually is actually having a device at which point it's hooked up to a programming system after a search warrant's applied for, consent is given for the phone. Essentially, one of our electronic evidence unit investigators will then utilize a set of programs to essentially crack into the phone if it has passcode. If it has passcode, sometimes we have the ability based on the programming to bypass that passcode. Once they're allowed inside the phone based on the programming, then essentially almost all contents from the phone is forensically extracted from that device. So things that aren't shown in phone records are going to be the apps associated with that device. Certain things like iMessages that are communicated differently, can be communicated over a Wi-Fi signal, will be different than your phone records because of how they're electronically communicated through the device. So inside that device, you'll also have your photographs that you've taken on your device. You'll have videos. You'll have internet search history. And some apps also allow for extraction of data, where other apps do not. Sometimes you may get Facebook messages. The way that it communicates on your phone and is stored, you'll actually get those potential communications via Facebook, but you don't get to see everything that happens at Facebook and how the extraction occurs. It doesn't show you their activity, their search history in terms of those apps. With the phone records themselves, the forensic download of the phone comes from the phone itself. Without the phone, we cannot do a forensic extraction of that actual device. So the other way to get potential records for someone, cellular records, is to go through the phone provider with either consent, subpoena, or search warrant applied for. We provide those things to the phone providers, where then we get the reports back from the phone providers on whatever we requested from them. Those reports typically will have the subscriber information that shows who that device is potentially registered to, or that account is registered to. It will have cell phone records to include their call data reports or CDR reports, which will show generally the phone number associated with the device, who it called, when it called. It'll also have different types of location data, and they're called different things based on the phone provider themselves. They just have different classifications on how they report the data. So they'll provide, essentially, I hate to say GPS style coordinates, because that's not the way that they really are on how they're triangulated. But they will provide location data if it's available. They will provide call records, such as call logs. They will provide SMS or MMS text message data showing when text messages occurred. And sometimes, not frequently, we will get content. Sometimes certain phone providers will do a very minimal, typically less than a week or about a week of actual content that's transmitted. So it'll actually have content of what was text messaged. But typically we don't get that content. The content we get from the actual text messages would be from the actual device itself. From the forensic report is how we get that. From the phone reports from the company, all we can tell is that a call was made or a text message was placed, who it was to, who it was from, if it was completed, how long the call was, and where that device was located when these things were happening.
On the forensic download, where you actually need the physical phone, are you able to tell what has been deleted?
Part of the process of the program itself, it does have the ability to potentially re-extract items that were deleted. It will identify and report if items were deleted. But depending on how that deletion of that phone occurred, we don't have any idea if items were deleted prior, other than having something else to corroborate, something has been changed to that phone. So a lot of times when something is deleted, like a photograph or potentially a text conversation or a call log, we are not able to recover those from the device.
Was the Chattanooga Police Department able to obtain Mr. Chen's cell phone records from T-Mobile?
Yes, that's correct.
Was the Chattanooga Police Department able to obtain Jasmine Pace's cell phone records?
Yes, that's correct.
And that provider was who?
Jasmine Pace's provider was Verizon.
And did the Chattanooga Police Department do a forensic download on Mr. Chen's cell phone?
We did.
Which cell phone, based on the photos the jury has seen today, was that?
It was the cellular device that was located in the red jewelry box within that upper room at 1943 Ashburn Court with the clear case in the backing on it, which I believe is for Boston College.
Do you have experience in reviewing a forensic download?
Yes.
Describe that for the jury.
Depending on how long someone's had a device or how active they are on the device, their reports can be very extensive, or they can be minimal, depending on their activity. You know, if you have someone that's had the phone for maybe a week, it doesn't communicate a lot, doesn't take photographs, doesn't do those things, it's a very quick extraction. There's not a lot of data that comes back because there's not a lot of activity on there. If you find a device that someone's had in possession for a couple of years, it could potentially store thousands and thousands of pages of documentation to include photographs, timelines, associated apps, and you know, call logs, text messages, all sorts of things. So they will be extracted and put into this forensic report, where then we're able to review it, because obviously it potentially comes in raw form with raw data. I'm no computer expert in terms of reviewing raw data, but when it comes back in the report, we're able to review those forensic extraction reports and review the contents of that phone.
Is there a name for the software that's used to review those extraction reports?
There are different names. There's Celebrite is one, and Axiom is another one as well.
Does the Chattanooga Police Department utilize Celebrite?
Yes, that is, Celebrite is actually the forensic tool, one of the forensic tools that is utilized to forensically extract that information from the device.
Do you have much experience with Celebrite?
Yes.
Approximately how many times would you say that you have performed forensic downloads and reviewed those downloads of cellular devices?
I've requested many, I don't know a number in terms of how many search warrants were applied for, consents were given for cellular devices where forensic downloads have been completed, or we submitted to our electronics evidence unit and they include those downloads. Not only review evidence in terms of my own cases, but other people's cases as well, within the homicide unit and other investigative units upon request. Hundreds, I don't know.
Okay. And were you able to review the forensic download of Mr. Chen's phone?
Yes, I was.
I got 84 through 114, so 115 would be next. I don't think the court was making sure that last batch of photos was admitted. You asked for those to be admitted.
Your Honor, if I didn't, I'd ask for those to be United States next exhibit.
I think 84 through 114.
Paper clip some of these together for you, investigator. I'm going to approach you. A handful of photos. This one goes together. The rest are separate. If you could review those.
He's reviewing those with counsel. pretty much flown by. It's 5 to 11. I usually like taking a mid-morning break. I think we're gonna go probably about another 30 minutes of this next line of questioning. Would you prefer a break now, or you wanna wait for another 30 minutes or so? You don't need a break now, Rachel. Okay, one, okay, that's enough. Okay, good. So we're gonna take a break now. It's 5 minutes till 11. It's probably back here at 5 minutes after 11, 10 minutes